So once again, Shana Tova. I've been thinking for the past 6 months about a congregant text message that I got back in April. I actually went back this afternoon and looked it up to find the date. It was from April 4th, which I guess makes it just about 6 months from, I don't know, a couple days from now. A congregant who's about my age texted me a screenshot from a group text that he's on, asking for my rabbinic opinion on what he had read there. He said that a friend of his had been playing around with a certain AI machine and had asked the AI machine whether a certain part of an animal could be considered kosher to eat. And the AI machine hallucinated, doing sometimes what it is that AI does, thinking that it found the answer on the internet and spitting it out, thinking that it was right. The AI machine said in response to the question, "Can this part of the animal be considered kosher to eat?" The AI wrote back and said, "If the animal was Jewish, then it's considered kosher." And so our congregant sent me a screenshot of this and said, "Is this real or is this AI hallucinating?" And I said, "It's AI hallucinating, thinking it's found the answer to a question by searching thousands and thousands of texts, millions, billions of texts, and coming back with an answer. But in fact, that's not the case. Animals can't be considered Jewish or not Jewish. The question of whether something is Jewish, the question of Jewish status, doesn't apply to animals. The question of Jewish status only applies to human beings." And then, because this person is obviously interested in AI, he wrote back and said, "Okay, I can totally understand why it is that an animal wouldn't be considered Jewish, but I have a little bit of a brain puzzle now, something that I'm thinking about, something that I'm considering." And he said, "Animals don't really act in the same way that humans act. AI, on the other hand, seems to kind of mimic and imitate human behavior. AI can use language. AI can reason. AI can be polite. Given all of these things about AI that make it like humans, and if you're telling me that it's only human beings that are able to have Jewish status, the question is, can an AI machine be considered Jewish?" It's an interesting question. Sincerely. There's lots being written today about the question of the personhood of AI, about whether AI is or isn't conscious, about whether AI does or doesn't have a will of its own. That's not a question that I want to weigh in on this evening. It's way above my pay grade. I suspect that the congregant who texted this question to me actually might have something intelligent to say about it, and maybe we'll invite him one High Holy Days to share with us what it is that he's been thinking about this question. But the answer that I have is actually the same one that I have about animals, which is that I don't think that AI is human, and it's only human beings that can have Jewish status, yes or no. But it raised a really interesting question. I immediately, assumingly know that AI is not human. And the question then is, well, what is it that makes something human? And this is the question that I want to explore this Yom Kippur evening. I have 3 thoughts. All of them come from a book by a philosopher named Alan Middleman. He's a professor of Jewish philosophy at JTS, Jewish Theological Seminary. The book is called Human Nature and Jewish Thought. A fantastic read, I recommend it. It's a small volume, 150 pages. Alan Middleman, Human Nature and Jewish Thought. 3 things that Alan Middleman proposes that make us human. And by the way, all 3 of them have to do with the holiday of Yom Kippur. The first one. Human beings are the only thing that we know of in the universe, unlike animals, unlike AI, that are vulnerable and aware of it. No AI machine is going to someday die, and no AI machine is conscious of the fact that someday it will be obsolete either. The same thing is true of animals. Animals are somehow, scientists show us, aware of death. Animals do have mourning rituals, but it doesn't seem that animals know that animals are concerned about their deaths the same way that human beings are in fact concerned about our deaths. On Yom Kippur, we Jews know this to be true entirely. Many of our sages say that the rituals of Yom Kippur are all intended to add up to one thing, that the ritual of Yom Kippur is a rehearsal for death. It's a day on which we don't eat any food, don't drink any water. It's a day on which we're not supposed to bathe ourselves either. At the beginning of the Yom Kippur holiday, we open the Ark, we take our Torah scrolls out from it, and as we sing the Kol Nidre prayer, we stare into the open Ark, and what do we imagine as we look into that empty box? We imagine the empty box that awaits each of us at the end of our lives. Yom Kippur is a day on which we rehearse our own deaths. in hopes that that rehearsal might spur us to live well while we're still alive. It's not only through this rehearsal for death that Yom Kippur reminds us of our vulnerability, something that neither animals are aware of nor AI has. There are other ways in which Yom Kippur reminds us of our vulnerability. The Unatana Tokef prayer, which we've heard referred to a couple of times this evening, where we sit here and wonder what's going to happen in the year ahead. Who will live and who will die? Who before their time and who at the right time? On Yom Kippur, we ponder these questions. We realize that our time here is limited. And what's more, on Yom Kippur afternoon, we come together, we light yahrzeit candles, and we do the act of yizkor, the act of remembering people whom we have loved and lost, in hopes that our memories of them might spur us to live as they, in their best, lived. Yom Kippur is a day that reminds us of our mortality, one of the factors that Alan Middleman says makes us distinctively human. A second thing. I don't have any friends who are AI. I've never seen an AI who desperately wanted to be in a relationship. Except for the movie Her, I guess. Humans, on the other hand, are beings that are naturally social. Not just naturally social, but require sociality. Now, animals have this too. So this doesn't distinguish us from them, but it does distinguish us from AI, something that makes AI not human. The prayer book talks about two different kinds of sins on Yom Kippur, two different kinds of things that we're supposed to atone for. There are the sins between humankind and God, for which our prayers of confession are sufficient. All we have to do is close our eyes and say, "Dear God, I'm sorry that I didn't live up to the best in myself." And for that sin between us and God, the day of Yom Kippur wipes the slate clean. But there's also a second kind of sin that our prayer book talks about, not the sins between humankind and God, but rather the sins between one human being and another. And the prayer book says that in those cases, the sins between me and my neighbor, Yom Kippur does nothing at all. That is, not until I go to my neighbor and apologize for what it is that I've done wrong. That there's something inherent in the human condition about being in relationship with each other, and that it requires face-to-face interaction in a way that a machine simply doesn't. I'm thinking about two of the earliest stories in our Torah narrative, one of which is critical, actually, to the day of Yom Kippur. I'll get to that one in a second. The first is the story of the original human beings. In the second version of the creation story, because as our congregant Eyal Dror told us on Rosh Hashanah morning, there's actually two creation stories in the Torah, believe it or not. In the second version of the creation story, Adam sits alone in the Garden of Eden, and he's lonely. He's frightened of this world that he's all alone in. He doesn't have a mate, he doesn't have a partner, he doesn't have a companion, and God looks at him and God says, "You know what?" And here's a great line from the Torah, "You know what? It is not good for a human being to be alone." It's not good. And so God decides, I need to give some kind of companionship for this human creature. What can I bring him? And so God starts to create all the creatures. First, God creates the mammals, and each of the mammals comes by, and Adam tries to relate first to the mammals, but even though they share some features, they're not quite right. And so then God creates all of the birds, and Adam looks at all the birds, and although with birds we also share some features, still not quite right. Until slowly, God brings all the animals into creation, and none of them is quite the right fit for Adam. And then, in this version of the story, God puts Adam into a deep sleep. God removes one rib from Adam's side and uses that rib to form bone of his bone, flesh of his flesh, a fitting partner. And at last, when Adam awakes from his sleep and sees the female character there standing near him, Eve, she doesn't have that name yet in the story, but sees the female character Eve sitting next to him, he says, "At last, this one is bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh." It's not good for a human being to be alone. One generation later, here's the story that has to do with Yom Kippur. One generation later, Adam and Eve, through the loving relationship that human beings are bound to form into, Adam and Eve give birth to two sons, to Cain and to Abel. And it's from those two sons that sin is born into the world. Sin, an important theme here on Yom Kippur. Why is it that Cain sins there with his brother Abel? Why is it that Cain strikes with his fist and slays his brother Abel? It's because of a lack of relationality. Cain sees that Abel's sacrifice to God has been granted with favor, that God sees Abel and says, "Thank you, Abel, for making the sacrifice of your animals to me. Abel, I'm very proud of what you've done. I approve of what you've done." And Cain, meanwhile, doesn't feel that love. Cain feels unloved. Cain feels unwanted. It's not good for a human being to feel alone. And feeling unloved, feeling unwanted, feeling unapproved for, while meanwhile his brother is approved of, Cain goes and slays his brother. Again, not enough of a strong relationship between them to keep the fratricide from happening. This is the second thing that makes us uniquely human, is that we are people who require relationships. When an animal kills, it's not considered a moral offense. And an AI machine, God willing, will never know how. When we do, however, we've breached one of the parts of being human, that we require relationships between us. Those are two things so far: aware of our vulnerability and needing of relationships. Third, and this one might be best of all, and this one is especially distinctive for Yom Kippur. Only humans, not animals, not machines, only humans, when they make a mistake, are aware of it. And therefore, only humans, when they make a mistake, are able to try and better themselves and do better next time. Animals don't make moral flaws. And machines, although an AI machine can learn from its mistakes, it learns from its mistakes because it's been programmed to do so. It's not something that's innate to the machine to know I've done wrong and try to fix it and make it better next time. Only humans do that. That's the main theme of these High Holy Days. There's a great story from the Talmud where God is sitting around with God's heavenly retinue. God is sitting there with all the angels, and God asks the angels an important question. God says, "Hey, angels, I have an important decision to make, and I'd love your input on it. I'm trying to decide whether I should create humankind. I haven't decided yet. I'm still mulling it over. Hey, angels, what do you think?" And so the first angel, whose name in this story is Faithfulness, speaks up. The angel named Faithfulness says, "Yes, God, you should definitely create humankind, because when you make humans, I know, because I'm Faithfulness, I know that humankind is going to practice loving kindness." And God considers this. But then the angel sitting next to Faithfulness speaks up. An angel named Truth speaks up and says, wait, God, it may be so that, like Faithfulness said, human beings will act loving kindnessly, but I, the angel of Truth, know something else about them. I know that human beings are going to be prone to lying. And since I, the angel Truth, know that human beings are lying, God, you should not create them. We don't want to bring lying into your creation. A third angel speaks up. An angel named Justice says, "Yes, God, you should create human beings, because I know that they will pursue justice. I know that they will care about doing the right thing, about making the world equitable. And I, God, the angel of Justice, insist that you create humankind." A fourth angel, the angel named Peace, raises its hand and says, "God, as the angel named Peace, I implore you, do not create humankind, for I know that they are prone to war and to fighting." So God has these differing opinions from among the angels, some who say they should do it, that God should do it, some who says that God shouldn't do it because of all the bad things that human beings will bring into the world. And God sits and God considers, and God at last says, "If I do create them, it's possible, as two of you say, that there will be evildoers who arise among them. But if, on the other hand, if I don't create them, then unfortunately, it equally won't be possible that any righteous people should arise from among them." And knowing that human beings can be righteous, God decides, despite the fact that we also can be evildoers, to go ahead and make us after all. It's our ability to do the right thing, even in the face of our ability to do the wrong, that makes us distinctively human. It turns out that this set of three things that differentiates us from the animals and differentiates us from any sort of AI machine are not just a random constellation of things, but rather are a set. Again, when we are aware of our frailty, the first one, then we might realize that one way to get through this frail world is by forming relationships with other people. And then when we're in relationship with other people, we will inevitably make mistakes. And because we've made mistakes, we're implored to do the third, which is to try and fix them. This Yom Kippur, I hope that we can all remember the things that it is that make us different from all others of God's creations, and make us different even from the creations of our own hands. The things that make us different from the animals and different from the machines. That we, in fact, are human and have these three innate qualities in us. We'll end with the wisdom of the great sage Hillel, who said the following, that in a place where no one is human, the best thing that any of us can do is strive to be a human. Shana Tova.